Hi folks, David Waring here again with InformedTrades.com and a special 3-lesson series on intermediate topics in the subprime lending crisis. From my series that I did earlier this year on the basics of the subprime crisis, we generated a lot of discussion during which 3 primary topics tended to arise over and over again. So with this in mind, I've put together a 3-lesson series which sort of sums up the discussions that we've had into 3 concise lessons where we're going to cover firstly the basics of off-balance sheet entities, secondly how the banks use these off-balance sheet entities and what the Enron connection is there, and thirdly the role that accounting is playing here, and specifically mark-to-market accounting. As I pointed out in my second lesson on the basics of the subprime financial crisis, these pools of debt that are causing so many problems right now in the financial markets are held in what are known as off-balance sheet entities, which are also referred to as conduits, special purpose vehicles, or SPVs for short, or structured investment vehicles, SIV for short. These entities have been around for a long time and have been used for both legitimate and illegitimate purposes in the past. The legitimate purpose for the use of off-balance sheet entities is to separate out the risk of a new part of a business from the existing business and to be able to raise capital for that new division or new entity without diluting existing shareholders. An example that Investopedia.com gives in an article they did on the subject is an oil drilling company will use an off-balance sheet entity oftentimes to fund their oil exploration activities because the oil exploration activities are much more speculative than the actual drilling of the oil. So this allows them to separate out the more speculative part of the business and raise capital without diluting the existing shareholders of the drilling business, and also separate out that risk and pass that off to investors on the and raise capital from investors who are willing to take on the more risky and potentially high rewarding exploration activity type investment. Okay, and that would be an example of a business using an off-balance sheet entity in the same sort of line of business. Now, there's also examples of legitimate uses of off-balance sheet businesses or entities which are used to separate out completely different businesses. And the example that Investopedia gives here is Williams Company, which is an energy company, launched a communications division of their company. And obviously the existing shareholders probably didn't want to have too much to do with a communications company. They bought it because it was an energy company. So by doing this through an off-balance sheet entity, they shielded, or the goal was to shield those existing shareholders from any risk associated with the new communications company, and to also prevent them from being diluted when capital was raised for that company. So as the examples we just discussed seem like legitimate uses for off-balance sheet entities, then why is there so much suspicion regarding these? The answer to this, I think, in most people's opinion, would lie in the fact that because these entities are off-balance sheet, they're only required to be disclosed in the footnotes of the financial statements of the parent company. Because there's not as much information, or it's harder to get information on these entities, I think most people feel that it's easier for companies to bend the rules or commit outright fraud through the use of off-balance sheet entities. Secondly, Enron used off-balance sheet entities to hide debt and inflate their earnings, and outright fraud, which resulted in multiple jail sentences for executives at that firm and the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. When you combine this with the fact that most of the problems that we're experiencing in the financial markets now originated in these off-balance sheet entities, and you can see why people are suspicious. So this suspicion, and whether it's warranted or not, is going to be the topic of our next lesson. So we hope to see you then. For more information on the subprime financial crisis, please visit us at InformedTrades.com, and have a great day.